In the small, quiet village of Greenhill, there lived a kind woman named Grace. She was married to John, the village blacksmith. Everyone in the village admired their love. They always seemed happy and in love, sharing laughter and joy. John was a tall, strong man who loved Grace very much. They had a simple but lovely life together. They dreamed of having children and growing old together in their cozy home at the edge of the village. One day, John's younger brother, James, returned to Greenhill after living in the big city for many years. James was charming and clever, and he quickly won over the villagers with his stories about the city. John was happy to have his brother back and invited him to stay with them until he found a place of his own. Grace welcomed James with open arms, happy to have family around. But soon, she noticed that James looked at her in a way that made her uncomfortable. His compliments felt too personal, and his smiles lingered a bit too long. She tried to ignore these feelings, thinking she was imagining things. One evening, when the sun was setting and the sky was a beautiful orange, James approached Grace in the kitchen. He looked serious and a bit scary. "Grace, we need to talk," he said in a low voice. Grace stopped stirring the pot of soup and looked at him. "What is it, James?" James stepped closer, his voice almost a whisper. "I know about your past, the secret you've been hiding from John. If you want it to stay hidden, you will do as I say." Grace felt her heart race. What could James possibly know? She had been very careful to leave her past behind when she married John. "James, I don't know what you're talking about," she said, trying to keep calm. James smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "Oh, but you do, Grace. I know about your life in the city, the one that could ruin everything if John found out." Grace's mind spun. The life James talked about was something she had tried hard to forget. She thought she had left it behind forever. "What do you want, James?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I want you," he said bluntly. "If you refuse, I will tell John everything. You will lose him and everything you love." Grace felt sick. She couldn't believe this was happening. She had always seen James as a brother, but now he was showing his true colors. "Please, James, don't do this," she pleaded. "John is your brother. You can't hurt him like this." James's face softened a little, but then he shook his head. "This isn't about John. This is about you and me. You have until tomorrow to decide." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Grace alone in the kitchen, her heart pounding with fear and sadness. Years ago, before she met John, Grace lived in a busy city. She worked as a housekeeper in a small guest house, but the money she made was not enough. She struggled to pay for food and rent. One day, a woman named Clara approached her with a way to make more money. Clara was beautiful and confident, and she always seemed to have plenty of money. Clara ran a business where women entertained wealthy men, and she wanted Grace to join. At first, Grace was horrified by the idea, but as her situation grew more desperate, she felt she had no choice. She reluctantly agreed, thinking it would only be for a short time. Grace became one of the most popular women in Clara's business. She did things she never wanted to do, all to survive. It was a time filled with shame and regret. One day, Grace found out she was pregnant. She hoped that having a child would give her the strength to leave this life behind. But sadly, she had a miscarriage, and the doctors told her she would never be able to have children. Grace was heartbroken. She saved enough money to leave the city and return to a village, hoping to start a new life. She met John and found happiness in his love and kindness. She never spoke of her past, afraid it would destroy her new life. But now, with James's threats, the secret she had fought so hard to keep was about to come out. The fear that John would discover she had been a prostitute and that she could never have children was too much to bear. She knew if John found out, it could destroy their marriage and their dreams. Grace spent the whole night feeling scared and worried. The moonlight came through the window, making shadows on the walls. She could hardly breathe, thinking about James's threats and how they could ruin her life with John. As the morning sun rose, Grace made a decision. She could not let James control her with her secret. She had to tell John the truth, no matter what happened. She hoped their love was strong enough to survive. That morning, as John got ready for work, Grace went to him with a heavy heart. "John, can we talk? It's very important." John looked at her with concern. He noticed the worry on her face. "Of course, Grace. What's wrong?" Grace led him to the living room and took a deep breath. "There's something I've been hiding from you. Something from my past that you need to know." John sat down, looking at her with a mix of worry and curiosity. "Go on, Grace. Whatever it is, we can face it together." Grace's hands shook as she started to speak. She told John about her life in the city, her struggles, and the desperate decision that led her to become an escort. She explained how she had hoped to escape by having a child, but the miscarriage left her unable to have children. John listened quietly, his face hard to read. When Grace finished, she looked at him with tears in her eyes, afraid of what he would say. "I am so sorry, John. I wanted to leave it all behind and start fresh with you. I love you more than anything, and I was scared you would leave me if you knew." John's face showed many emotions. He stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the village. The silence felt heavy and long. Finally, he turned back to Grace, his voice filled with sadness. "Grace, sigh. I don't know what to say. Please, John, understand that I did what I had to do to survive. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you so much," Grace pleaded, her voice shaking. John took a deep breath, his eyes still on her. "I need time to think about this, Grace. It's a lot to take in. I need to be alone for a while." Grace's heart sank, but she nodded. "I understand, John. Take all the time you need." John left the house, and Grace felt like the world was crushing her. She had feared this moment for so long, and now that it had come, she felt more lost than ever. As the day went on, Grace tried to keep busy with house chores, hoping to keep her mind off her worries. But James's shadow loomed large in her thoughts. She knew he wouldn't give up easily. In the afternoon, James came to the house, his eyes gleaming with a cruel light. "Well, Grace, have you made your decision?" Grace looked at him with defiance. "I told John everything. You have no power over me now." James's smile vanished, replaced by cold anger. "You think that will save you? John might forgive you, but the rest of the village? They will shun you, treat you like an outcast. Your life here will be over." Grace felt a chill. She hadn't thought about how the villagers might react. They were close-knit and traditional. News of her past would spread quickly, and she knew people could be very judgmental. "Why are you doing this, James? Why are you so determined to ruin my life?" Grace asked, her voice trembling with fear and anger. James stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. "Because you rejected me. I wanted you, Grace, and you turned me down. No one rejects me and gets away with it." Grace felt a wave of fear. "You're sick, James. This isn't about me. It's about your twisted need for control." James laughed, a cold and joyless sound. "Call it what you want, but you will pay for rejecting me." Over the next few days, the village was filled with whispers and rumors. John came home late every night, quiet and distant. Grace could feel the strain on their relationship, and it broke her heart. She knew she had to find a way to stop James and his threats once and for all. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Grace decided to ask her friend, Mary, for help. Mary was her closest friend and someone she trusted completely. Grace went to Mary's house and told her everything. Mary listened carefully, her face serious. "Grace, you can't let James win. We need to show the village what kind of person he really is," Mary said firmly. "We need to find proof of his bad behavior." "But how?" "He's very clever and sneaky," Grace replied, feeling desperate.